What's going on, everybody? AHS Rules back again with another video, and the best way to describe this is the third video of the NBA catch-up weekend, because obviously all this week I was making videos non-NBA related because All-Star break, kind of take a break from making NBA videos, and then the NBA is back. It's been very fire. The 76ers Celtics game just ended. That crazy shot from Joel Embiid that didn't even count. Very crazy. Then yesterday, the crazy when y'all are seeing this, the Kings-Clippers game was crazy. It's just like, the NBA is back. The NBA, I can't really say it's back, but they're heating up at the right time. Every game matters for, I would say, 75% of the league. So, definitely the right time to start caring about the NBA. So, like I said, this is my third video about the NBA this weekend. I made a video talking about the Portland Trail Blazers, which I know is kind of a weird topic, but it's something I've had an opinion on that I wanted to get out there. Check that out. Another opinion thing that not really that important, but I wanted to get my opinion out there on. The Most Improved Player Award, that there's not really a criteria, and I kind of created my own criteria for it. And like I said, I had an opinion on it. I want to get that out there. Again, check that out. And this is the last thing that I've had an opinion about that I want to get out there, because there's obviously just a lot of people talk about these two things in particular a lot, and I think it's a bit bogus when they do it. So, with the Most Improved Player Award, I was just saying, every year we always kind of have this like debate, like, oh, who should win it? Like, how should the criteria be? And like, there's not really an origin point. There's an origin point to my problem with this term: Big Three and Super Team in the NBA. The origin port obviously came with the Super Team, because once Kevin Durant got traded to the Phoenix Suns, everybody tried to call it a Super Team. And I kind of objected to it a bit. And then, backing up a little bit further, with the Big Three, this is a funny one. The Wizards are, in the offseason, their main goal is to keep their Big Three of Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, and Kristaps Porzingis. And I'm like, that's a big three? A trio that hasn't made the playoffs and are, at this moment, outside the playoff window? That's a big three? I think, as a team, you obviously should probably look at it as a big three, but just to say big three is kind of funny when you look at actual big threes. So, I think, hypothetically, to solve that whole problem and debacle, they should call it their main three. Every team has their main three players they care about and they want to build around, and they just obviously will be there in the long run, or they would hypothetically get rid of that third guy to get another guy to fill that person's void. So every team has, hypothetically, a big three, but they should look at it as their main three. Because a big three, in history, we've had big threes, and they have done a lot. So, to start this video out, I'm going to talk about what my definition is for big threes and super teams in the NBA. So, my definition of a big three is a trio that's successful for a period of time with either championships or consistency. And consistent stability is what I put, which I don't know grammatically if that's correct, but that's how I described it. So, in this video, I'm going to go through like big three, like current day big threes, historic big threes, and failed big threes. But I'm also going to go through current super teams, which, spoiler, there's not any current super team, and historic super teams. So my definition of a super team is when a big three adds another star or superstar player or other really good players that would benefit or be way better on other teams, but they're so good and they're good on this super team. And especially when they do not lose anybody of importance to add that player, because I've noticed with a lot of super teams, that last part is very much the case. So, I'm going to go through successful and historic big threes. Now, another spoiler alert, these big threes, I'm not going to name every big three, because that would take a while, and I'm only naming them 2000s and after. So I can name the Lakers of the 80s and the Celtics of the 80s and the Bulls of the 90s. Just, I wasn't watching back then, and we already kind of know a lot about them because those are the top tier. So, the most recent big threes, like 2000s and afterwards. This is probably the model big three, And there's the perfect picture of them that would be the thumbnail of this video if I did not have a problem with them, and I just don't like them. Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. They have 4 titles together. They've been through a lot over their tenure together. They are the definition of a big three. They are the perfect big three. And they only have 2 finals losses. And they've been to 6 finals. That's very good. Another big three, aka the big three that a lot of people like to crap on one of the guys. I think also with every big three, there's always the third guy that gets crapped on. And this one especially has one. LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love. They had 3 finals together. 2 of them obviously a bit shaky, especially the 2015 one. But they are the historic 3-1 comeback. Greatest team of all time because they defeated the greatest team of all time, even though like they not the Bulls. Like I said, I'm not getting into that whole debate. And like I said, it's very weird because Kevin Love, it definitely hurt him getting bought out by Cleveland because I'm like, he just should have like finished the season out. I know he was out of the rotation and whatnot, and in Miami, it's just been 2 games, but he hasn't been the greatest. But I just felt he should have finished his season out with Cleveland and then moved on. It just kind of felt like a very bad ending to something good they had there. The other model big three, and when I think of big three, this is the one I think about just because this is like the historic one, the one that shook up the league and everything, and is the thumbnail of the video because, like I said, this is the big three I think of when you talk about them. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, even though you only got 2, so you still 5 away, guys. Y'all got to come back and do that, but they're the definition of big three. Like I said, there are 2 big threes. When you say big threes, those are the first 2 I think of because I know historically you can go back to the 90s, but I don't think during that time frame they're being called big threes. Where with this, LeBron, D-Wade, Bosh, they were called the big three, along with the other one, which I'm about to mention now, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. Now, something that I would give Boston credit for that I won't with Miami, at least they gave up stuff to get Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen because they were acquired via trade and they had to give up players. Now, were those players better than Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen? Not really. With the Heat, they signed LeBron James and Chris Bosh. So that's kind of why I'm not going to say I've always looked at the Celtics big three differently than the Heat one. And then last one that I need to mention, which again, another model big three. And I'm not going to say they're very forgotten, but they don't get bring up as much as these other ones. Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. They went to, I'm trying to think, because obviously Parker and Ginobili weren't at the first finals run in 99. So they were in the 03 finals, 05, 07, 2013, and 14. They only lost one of those. So they got a great finals record. And Tim Duncan, if I was Tim Duncan, I'd be very mad that we lost that 2013 finals. Because then he would be 6-0 in the finals. And that's just, like, that one loss, I think, kind of hurts Tim Duncan's resume. But a lot of people are already looking at him as a legend. So, those, in my opinions, are the successful big threes. Now, I'm about to go through some failed big threes. And like I said, I'm not going through every failed big three just because that'd take a while. But when I Googled failed big threes, these are the main ones that I consistently kept seeing. Now, I'm going to give an honorable mention to this one because it hurts me to say this is a failed big three, especially because they're so young in their career. But they had some success in their short amount of time together. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. I'm not going to go any further because I don't want to call them a failed big three. So I put them in the honorable mention of the successful big threes, but they didn't want to title together, so I couldn't really call it one. So, failed big threes. Y'all know me. I love Russell Westbrook. I got to start off with 2. Westbrook, LeBron, and Anthony Davis. We all expected it to be shaky, and crappy, and this whole 2-year span Westbrook on the Lakers has been terrible. That's just kind of the end-all, be-all. And hopefully he does very well on the Clippers, but we'll see. It just didn't work out. Again, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony. They got eliminated in the first round. That was actually crazy. And they only lasted a season together. Very crazy. And I also got to take a small pit stop because I forgot about this big three that lasted like 10-ish games. And it's even hard to call it a big three. Carmelo Anthony, James Harden, and Chris Paul. It kind of was, kind of wasn't. Because Melo obviously was out of the league after this big three. So it's definitely, if you want to call it one, you could. But I have definitely forgot about Carmelo's Houston Rockets run. speaking of Melo, last time I mentioned Melo in this, Carmelo Anthony, Amari Stoudemire, Tyson Chandler, one playoff series win. They're always very good, always a great team to use on 2K, and always had the Knicks looking fun. It's just like, the grand be all, it just never compared to the Miami Heat Big Three that they were always compared to. So, now some other ones. This one, it's not really a spoiler, but a video very, very soon talking about this Big Three and other surrounding pieces to them. Philadelphia 76ers. Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons. They should have brought Jimmy back. They should have done everything in their powers to bring Jimmy back. Because who knows what that team looks like if Jimmy was there. But, like I said, I'm making a that's my next NBA topic. And again, unless breaking news happens, my next video topic for the NBA is going to be talking about the 76ers. So, I'll talk more about them in a minute. Now, speaking of Jimmy Butler, these two kept popping up. When I looked up failed big threes, and like it kind of was going to make me sound like a Jimmy Butler hater. It was just like, no, Google Images of the Jimmy Butler hater. Jimmy Butler, Karl Anthony Towns, and Andrew Wiggins. There's a lot of articles like saying they are the next big three. They're the best, like, besides the Warriors. They are the next big three. And they won one playoff game together. And obviously it was a big deal because the Timberwolves missed the playoffs for so many years. And then Jimmy came and carried them to the playoffs. And then obviously it didn't amount to much. But I never really looked at it as a big three. And obviously he was gone the next year in that whole debacle. And then another one that is somewhat forgotten about. Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Wade, Rajon Rondo. If you want to call it a big three, you could, but obviously it did not do much. Last two. Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford. Al Horford, all of them multiple-time All-Stars that they had, or I think Gordon Hayward only made one. He might have made 2 All-Star games, but it should have been something, and it's very weird that Boston's best season came. I can't even say that because obviously they had the seat. You get what I'm saying. Their best successful season came without Kyrie and Gordon Hayward. And I know that they just made the finals, but you get what the point I'm saying, like pre-Tatum and Brown takeoff. And then the last big three, and I'd probably say this is the most failed big three, because out of all these that I just named, they were together the longest and always had high expectations and even had a nickname. Lob City, Los Angeles Clippers, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan. Now, I know a lot of people, like DeAndre Jordan's a joke to a lot of people now, but Chris Paul made him an all-NBA player, all-star, I can't say all-time great, but like definitely Clippers great. And every year, people had the Clippers very high, very high, very high. And injuries just always direct. And most of the time, it was either injuries or just a complete collapse. Their last year together, they lost to the Utah Jazz in the first round, and the Jazz really just had Gordon Hayward at the time. Rudy Gobert was on the come up, but you get the point, like, there were so many chances, and they didn't make the conference finals. They didn't. They came close against OKC, but they collapsed. It's just this big three, I think, is probably out of the most recent, the most failed big three, because they had the longest tenure together, and obviously it didn't work out. So, again, like I said, a big three to me is a trio that is successful for a period of time, either with championships or just staying consistent for a long period of time, mainly in the playoffs. So like I said, the Wizards, if they don't make the playoffs with their big three, then they're not really a big three. Especially because, like I said, they didn't make the playoffs last year. It's going to be very hard for them to do it this year. It's not really a big three. So I went through some big threes. I'll end the video talking about the modern day big threes. But before we get to that, I want to wrap up the super team talk, because I didn't really break it down into failed super teams and successful super teams, because a lot of the super teams are a mixture of the big threes. So it's a mixed bag talking about the super teams. Obviously, probably the best super team, the 2017, 18, and 19 Golden State Warriors. Because like I said, a super team to me is a big three, adds a really good player that was once a superstar or a star, and they really didn't give up much to get him, and that star's not probably far away from his peak. So, with that Warriors team, they had their big three of Steph, Clay, and Draymond. They added Kevin, like they lost Harrison Barnes, but they added Kevin freaking Durant to the greatest team of all time. I do this a lot. That means quotations, because it's not my opinion, but to a lot of people, it's their opinion in quotations. That's why I always do that a lot. But they won 2 titles out of it, obviously, and then they added DeMarcus Cousins, which made them a super team, And obviously, it didn't work out. DeMarcus Cousins was hurt most of the year, recovering from injury. Then he came back and got hurt. And then, obviously, in that playoff run, that's when Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson got hurt. So, the super team failed them. And then Kevin Durant left. And then you get to the point where we're at. I don't want to talk about the Warriors, obviously. Then we have the 2013 and 2014 Miami Heat, because they added Ray Allen, who ended up being a very key member to them because he saved the day in Game 6. He hit the clutch 3 that you hear all the time. Rebound by Bush, back up Allen, his 3-pointer, bang, bang, tight game. And I know that he wasn't peak superstar, but if he was to hypothetically go back to Boston, you would still call that a big 3. And like I said, I don't blame Ray Allen for leaving Boston because they kind of treated him like crap, but he was the third wheel in that duo because Kevin Garnett was the MVP at one point and Paul Pierce was the guy that was made by Boston. He was always the third wheel and he always felt disrespected, and they even tried to replace him with Rondo pretty much, and he always had problems with Rondo. I don't blame Ray Allen for leaving Boston. So now we do get some failed big 3s. Let's go through them quickly. I just made a whole video talking about them. Check it out if you have not. The 2020 and 21 Nets. Now, they obviously had the big 3 of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. And a lot of people try to call that a super team right away. I'm like, I wouldn't really call it that because they just gave up Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, who were very vital pieces to the team. But they replaced it with Blake Griffin, who was an all-star, obviously, at one point in his career. And once he came to Brooklyn, he was doing stuff that he was not doing in Detroit anymore. So it was like, what the hell? What are we seeing now from Blake? This is kind of a different Blake Griffin. And then for a short period of time, they had LaMarcus Aldridge, and then obviously he left. But that day, LaMarcus Aldridge signed because it was like rumored he was going to sign with the Heat. And he signed with Brooklyn. A lot of people were very sour about it because they thought their team had no chance of winning in the title hunt. So obviously it was a failed big 3. Or not even big 3, super team. It is what it is. And even I forgot about this. I forgot to write this one down just because it was so long ago and so crappy. The I'm going to call him Joe Harris. Joe Johnson, Darren Williams, Brooke Lopez, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Jason Terry super team, which just, again, didn't work out and kind of is what has put Brooklyn Nets in such a run for a long period of time. But also, another failed super team around that time period, the 2012-2013 Lakers. They tried to get Chris Paul a couple seasons prior after some successful finals runs, which there wasn't really a big 3. It was a dynamic duo of Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol. Then they also tried to trade Pau Gasol to get Chris Paul, but it is what it is. But they were able to add Dwight Howard, who was a multiple-time defensive player of the year, even met them in the finals, and Steve Nash, who was a guy that they beat to get to the finals one of those years, and was a 2-time MVP. That was a super team. Ultimately, it failed due to injuries, and they just none of the players kind of meshed well together, and it just kind of like, again, another thing that's swept under the rug, but it obviously failed. Now, this one is definitely a stretch, but by my definition, technically it would be, but it's a bit of a stretch. The 2010-11 Boston Celtics, because they obviously had their big 3 of Garnett, Pierce, and Ray Allen, and then they added Shaq and Jermaine O'Neal, who at one point were stars of their own, but it was just way past their prime, so that's why I say it's definitely a bit of a stretch. And then the last one that I will mention, and one that for the longest time I didn't know about, and I wasn't watching, I was freaking 4 years old when this team was formed, the 2003-04 Lakers, which obviously added Karl Malone, who was a multi-time MVP, and Gary Payton shortly after. Gary Payton was still very good, and I'm not going to praise Karl Malone, but ultimately they just fell to the Detroit Pistons, who I think I want to make a video talking about that Detroit Pistons team, so I'm not going to talk a whole bunch about them. And like I said, I'm not going to bring up the Akeem Olajuwon, Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley, Big 3, because like I said, I was alive at the time. It's not really worth me mentioning this. So these are the super teams. So like I said, to end this video, I'm going to talk about the current day Big 3s and Big 3s that are on the come up. And the good thing about the modern / current day Big 3s is that a lot of them have like a fourth guy on that team that you can insert as that third guy if you wanted to. So, for example, the Milwaukee Bucks, they obviously won a title with this big three of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday. But if you want to take one of those out and put, or you're obviously keeping Giannis, so if you want to take Middleton or Holiday out and add Brook Lopez, you could. I don't think you would, but you get the point that I'm saying. Already mentioned the Warriors several times in this video. Steph, Clay, and Draymond. But if you want to insert Jordan Poole into that big three, you could, but like that big three's been there for all 4 title runs. So that's why I kept him in there. Now, again, these are the only 2 that have won NBA titles together, and the other ones have been in the playoff hunt, in the playoffs several times, and in conference finals even. So, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Marcus Smart, I consider big three just because Tatum and Brown, multiple-time All-Stars now, we're in the finals, like I said. Marcus Smart finally got that Defensive Player of the Year that he had been wanting for the longest time, so he at least has some awards to his name. But if you want to add a Al Horford or a Robert Williams to their big three, you could. But I put Marcus Smart because he's also the longest tenured Celtic there. This one, another one. Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero. If you want to put Kyle Lowry in that, you could, but Tyler Hero, 6th Man of the Year, and was there for the bubble finals run for them. He wasn't there in the conference finals because he was hurt last year, but you get the point. At least they have 2 conference finals appearances together. This one, by definition, is a big three. As of this moment, they have still not played together, even though it's supposed to happen this week. Hopefully it does. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul. And even if I wanted to change it and take Kevin Durant out to get their OG big three of DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul, it still works because, like I said, they have a finals run together, and they were the best team in the league last year, even though this year they look like complete crap and crapped out in the playoffs. Who knows? Like it's still a big three, but their actual new big three still hasn't played together, so it's very weird. And then last but not least, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. Like I said, you can insert Aaron Gordon into this if you wanted to, but I imagine Michael Porter Jr. would probably want to stay because he's the one drafted by him and was in the conference finals run for him. This one, like, is a bit of a stretch, but out of these that I'm about to name as a questionable one, they at least have been together the longest. So, like I said, to end this video, I'm talking about the up-and-coming big threes that are either about to accomplish a lot together or completely fail and be inserted to the failed big threes list. So, the one I think is up and coming, and up next, and yes, I am biased, Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane. As of right now, they're number 2 seed. They can finish as a 2 seed in back-to-back years. They might even jump to the number 1 seed. Who knows? The playoffs, I don't think seeding matters in the playoffs. Home court should matter because a lot of road teams this year have completely sucked. So having home court advantage would mean a lot. But on paper, whatever team you're going against, it's going to be some type of fight. So, like I said, the Grizzlies, they were the 2 seed last year. They could be the 2 seed again this year. I think that means something. I think it means something. Another one that is on the timeline of the Grizzlies, they just have not played together and would be very good and even got their own Slam Magazine cover, which I think that is also something that should be mentioned because the Celtics got a Slam Magazine cover, the Heat got a Slam Magazine cover, the Warriors have a couple of Slam Magazine covers, and this team just got one recently. The New Orleans Pelicans, Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum. You can insert Trey Murphy or Herb Jones or Jonas Valanciunas if you want to, but CJ, they made a big deal of trading and acquiring him. But like I said, we've just never seen this big three play together because somebody's always hurt. And when they do play together, they're very well. Like I said, they're on the upper trajectory with the Grizzlies. Now, this one is a rare case, and a case I would love to see a lot of teams have. The Cleveland Cavaliers. And the rare case is that I don't really look at them as a big three. I look at them as 2 separate duos, dynamic duos at that. And that's something that I want to see a lot of teams. I'm not going to say a lot. It's just very rare. Because, like, if you were to say, who's the big three, who are you going to leave out? Between Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But like I said, they are 2 dynamic duos. They have their backcourt in Mitchell and Garland, and they have their front court in Allen and Mobley. Now, I really love this front court because I love it with the power forward and center duos. There's not many good ones in history. You obviously think of Tim Duncan and David Robinson, and even Anthony Davis and Marcus Cousins, but that lasted like a season and a half. I want to see more great power forward and center duos, and I'm glad that Allen and Mobley are kind of the modern day one. Now, wrapping it up, Minnesota Timberwolves. They should be one, but again, they have not played a lot together. Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Karl-Anthony Towns, and when they did play together, it was a mess. But what they gave up to get Rudy Gobert, this should be a big three. I just kind of have to point that out there. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Another one that a team probably wishes this was a big three. It isn't. It just isn't one. But I felt that I kind of had to mention them. The New York Knicks. Two-time All-Star Julius Randle. Should have been All-Star Jalen Brunson. And R.J. Barrett. Which I'm not an R.J. Barrett hater. But I just never really have anything to say about R.J. Barrett. Because he's never, like, consistent. He's either consistently bad. He's never, like, consistently good. And I don't like hating on players or saying bad things on players. He's just, like, he's not a big three worthy guy. You're definitely, Mitchell Robinson, you're not putting in that tier. Freaking Josh Hart just got there. Quentin Grimes, like, that's not even a big three. I'm going to stop the conversation there. But it's just like, I think Knicks fans would say they have a big three. I just don't think they do. And then, last one. Another one that I hope works out. Because this guy is already on the failed big three list twice, technically 3 times. The Clippers. They added a former MVP, multiple-time All-Star Russell Westbrook to their dynamic duo of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. We just don't know how long this is going to last. They could break this up in the offseason. I would consider it I had to consider it a failed big three, considering I consider the Carmelo Anthony Rockets one a failed big three, but who knows? So I'm looking over my... one other one that I forgot about to write down. Actually, I forgot to write down two. So I'm just looking over my wall of hats to see if I missed any notable ones. Two that I did forget to mention. The 76ers. Joel Embiid, James Harden. The main problem is, who's the third? Tobias Harris, who they pay a lot of money to, but is in that R.J. Barrett boat where he's not consistent. Or Tyrese Maxey, who is the young up-and-comer, the guy that I imagined what they would consider their third guy. And again, video about the Sixers coming soon. And then the other one, the Chicago Bulls. DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic. On paper, the Bulls should be a great team. It just is not on paper anymore. That paper is crumpled up, and they are ready for this season to end to throw it in the trash can, in my opinion. So, it was there. All those guys have been multiple-time All-Stars. So, by definition, they're a big three. But they could end up in that failed big three list next season. So, to recap, I think every team has their main 3 players. And they should definitely look at it as they have their main 3 guys that they want to build around. Because you need 3 guys that are really good to be successful. And if you are successful or just consistent for a long, long period of time, you're a big three, in my opinion. Whether you're failed or successful, that's for your championship window to decide. I think a super team is when a big three adds a superstar or very, very, very good player to their team, especially without having to give up much to get that guy. So, I just want to get this. This is another thing like the Most Improved Player Award, where I hear a lot of people talk about it, but there's never ever really a solution to it, or it gets very over dramatic, and I just kind of wanted to put my little 2 cents into it, and so there it is. So, like I said, next NBA video, I should be talking about the Philadelphia 76ers. I might make another video in between that. We will have to see as the time goes on. But thank you for watching this video. Watch my other videos. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.